There is a stillness that follows a silent cry. You stand before the mirror, not looking at a face, but through it. The skin is flushed, the eyes are holding water, like a misty landscape after a storm. But what truly holds you is not the reflection. It is a profound, quiet recognition. The one you are looking at is not the woman you have been building. She is not a performance. She is a soul, newly emerged from its shell, naked and present to a truth that can no longer be ignored. You cannot go back to who you were. An ancient wisdom teaches that the soul does not yearn for perfection. It does not seek approval. It longs for wholeness, the harmony between the river of your life and the ocean of your deepest being. But to flow toward that ocean, there is a passage that cannot be avoided, the passage of the breaking. This is the moment the armor falls away. The polite smiles, the agreeable nods, the times you whispered, "It is fine," as your inner world fractured. All these constructions suddenly feel heavier than stone, too brittle to hold. There is no energy left for the performance. The need to be pleasant, to be correct, to fit the mold dissolves into exhaustion. And in this great emptiness, a path reveals itself. Not a journey to become a more desirable woman, but to return to the woman you are. In my tradition, this is known as the journey of returning to the source. It is when a person begins to turn away from the noise of the world, to hear the silence within, to remember who they were before they were told who they should be, and to rebuild themselves from the inside out, quietly, without an audience, but with a deep, unshakable resolve. 1. The path of the unseen forest, moving beyond the shadows of the roles we play. Some souls walk this earth for a lifetime seeking love, yet never live for one day as themselves. They are praised for their soft, spoken nature, for their sacrifice, for their devotion. But inside, there is a vast, silent ache that no one else can hear. A teacher once told me, the most profound courage is to fully meet yourself. This is not a gentle idea. It is a calling that cuts through the many layers we have been given to wear. The good daughter who knows when to smile. The devoted partner who knows how to soothe. The perfect mother who places her own heart last. These are not false things, but without awareness, they become vessels that are too small for the spirit they are meant to contain. In the old maps of the soul, these roles are called archetypes. They are like rivers that flow in the collective heart of humanity. The mother, the maiden, the lover, the caregiver. They are ancient guides. But when a soul lives only in one river, it forgets it is connected to an entire ocean. A woman confined to being the selfless caregiver may forget she is also a wild creator, a seeker of solitude, a dancer. A woman who lives only as the good girl learns to silence her no, to bury her anger, and her inner landscape becomes a desert. A clear sign of this inner drought is the constant battle between the face you show the world and the voice that whispers in the quiet of the night. So many women who are successful, who are admired, who are loved, still find themselves in a silent room, feeling an emptiness they cannot name, because what they are living is not their essence, it is the role. The mask we wear to navigate the world. This mask helps us belong, but if we wear it for too long, we forget the face beneath. And then one day, from the darkness of the forgotten self, the shadow speaks. The shadow is not evil. It is the unlived part of you, the forgotten parts of your soul. It is where your honest anger, your unspoken desires, and your fierce independence and your silenced wildness reside. For women, this inner wilderness is often filled with energies we are taught are too much, too strong, too sensitive, too free, too raw, to be loved. Many of us learn to hide this forest. We prune it, we fence it in, until one day, the wilderness breaks through the fence. It may appear as a sudden grief, a deep unrest in a perfect life, or a shattering after a great achievement. As an old text says, until you make the unknown known, it will guide your life and you will call it destiny. When the shadow is not met, it pulls the strings from behind the curtain. The real journey begins when a woman no longer fears her own wilderness, but learns to walk within it. She allows herself to feel her anger without the poison of guilt, to honor her desires without shame, to say no, to withdraw, to release the roles she once thought were her fate. A woman in this passage of awakening will have days of chaos. She is no longer who she was, but she does not yet know who she is becoming. The masks are on the floor. Relationships are shifting. The inner world is a landscape after a storm, but it is here, in the fertile mud, that a new self takes its first breath. The truth is, the darkness is not the enemy. It is the guide. A wise one said, "Enlightenment is not found by imagining beings of light, but by making the darkness conscious. It is by walking into the very places where we feel not enough, unlovable, or too much, that we reclaim our wholeness. And the miracle is this: when a woman dares to embrace her own shadow, she unleashes a true life force. She becomes deeper, more compassionate, more powerful, radiant in a way that cannot be taught or faked. I recall a woman who shared her story with me. She was the perfect wife, always kind, always appropriate, always putting everyone first. After an abrupt divorce, she fell into a great darkness. Through her inner work, she met a truth that broke her heart. She had never once lived for herself. She learned to write in a journal, to walk alone in the forest. She tried to paint, to scream, to cry. Finally, she said, "I don't know who this woman is becoming, but she feels more alive than I have ever been." That was her true self, so long hidden in the shadow, now being invited, piece by piece, into the light. When a woman steps beyond her roles and her shadow, she does not become a better version for others. She does not become a copy of some ideal. She becomes herself, complex, unpredictable, sometimes messy, but always true. And that truth, once lived, carries an energy that everyone around her can feel. A quiet, magnetic presence, not because she is perfect, but because she is, to her very bones, honest. In a world of edited images and standardized emotions, where women are relentlessly told what they should be, this journey of meeting the shadow, removing the mask, and choosing oneself is nothing less than a sacred act. A woman who dares to walk into her darkness, to reclaim her own light, is changing not just her own life. She is changing the world. And perhaps that is the kind of woman everyone wants to be near. Not because she is trying to be loved, but because she has chosen to love the truth of who she is. 2. The sacred fire, from the breaking to the rebirth. After the masks have fallen, when the shadow is no longer an enemy, but a companion on the path, the woman steps across a new threshold. It is not a place of peace, but a field of ruins where the old self is gently collapsing. My lineage has never hidden this truth. The journey to wholeness does not begin with comfort. It begins with a breaking. So the real question is this: have you ever fallen so deep that you were forced to meet yourself again? For many women, rebirth begins with a shock that feels like annihilation, a sudden goodbye, a cold betrayal, or quieter, a morning when you wake and cannot find a single reason to rise. What once felt like your life, your roles, your duties, your habits, now feels like an empty room. In that moment of absolute loss, when all outer supports have crumbled, the deepest self begins to speak. As one sage wrote, "He who wishes to have an answer to the problem of great sorrow must first of all know himself." In the darkness, in the pain, lies the hidden gate to self-knowledge. Perhaps you have been in that dark room, where the phone does not ring, and the silence is so vast you begin to hear your own heart. You believe you are lonely, but in truth, you are in a sacred meeting with someone who has been waiting for a very long time. You. In my tradition, this is the beginning of what is called inner alchemy. It is not the escape from suffering, but the transformation of suffering into awakening. Just as the old art sought to turn lead into gold, this inner art turns collapse into strength. It turns the wound into a doorway. A woman once shared that she had lived a good life. Husband, children, a stable job, a proud family. But one morning, after everyone had left for the day, she sat at the breakfast table and began to cry without reason. She felt an emptiness so terrifying it made her shake. Not long after, she sank into a profound state of sorrow, but instead of only seeking a remedy to return to normal, she began to write. She wrote down her hidden feelings, her forgotten dreams. All the time she said, yes, when her soul screamed, no. Then she found this line in an old text: there is no coming to consciousness without pain. She cried again, because for the first time, her pain was seen not as a sickness, but as a messenger. If you are reading this and your heart aches, if you are moving through a hard passage and asking, why me? Perhaps this is not your end. Perhaps this is your beginning. The soul does not wish to sleep forever. At some point, it will rise and demand to be lived. And often, it chooses to awaken through the touch of great pain. What is powerful is that the old wisdom never encourages us to move on quickly. It does not ask us to stay positive. It says true transformation happens when we have the courage to stay with ourselves in the chaos, in the ruins. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. To meet yourself in the moment of your greatest vulnerability is not weakness. It is the doorway to unshakable strength. An awakened woman is not one who is never broken. She is one who knows what it means to fall. She has curled into a ball with no one to call. She has loved others so much she became lost. But in those nights that no one sees, she is reborn, not with anger, but with a quiet vow. From this day on, I will not abandon myself again. Do you remember a moment you thought you had hit the very bottom, yet somehow you rose? That was not an accident. That was the sacred alchemy. The great turning that begins not with denial, but with the full acceptance of what is true. In the darkness, in the loneliness, your soul is learning to say, I am my own. It is a paradox, is it not? Many believe an attractive woman is one who is always strong, who never shows weakness. But those who have been shattered, who have dared to sit with their own pain, they carry a healing presence that cannot be faked. They do not speak with mere words. They speak with their being, because their soul has been melted in the fire and reformed from within. As it is said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The greatest gift is not to be loved by another. It is to become yourself. If you are in that gray space where the old is gone and the new has not yet taken shape, do not rush, stay, feel, write, scream if you must. Like a master at the forge, you are in the fire of becoming. And from this fire, a woman is being born, not from an ideal, but from ashes. You are so close. You may not see it yet, but deep within you, something is changing. This is not the end. This is the beginning of the miracle. 3. The rise of the integrated woman, the mountain and the river. Then, after the storm, when the embers are still glowing in her heart, something quiet begins to happen. This woman no longer looks for a rescuer. She no longer hopes someone will come and lift her out of the deep. She no longer sends long messages to hold on to what has already crumbled. She begins to do something that once felt foreign. She stays with herself. It is not a dramatic choice, but a silent, deep turning, a movement from within. The soul has stopped begging and has started to speak in its own voice. Have you ever felt this? A morning when you no longer care what they think, and all that matters is being true to your own heart. That is the moment a woman begins to rise from within. Whole, a version of herself that no longer lives to please, but to be present to her own essence. The traditions call this the journey from the persona, the social self, to the self, the very center of the soul. When a woman sheds the outer layers and returns to her core, she is no longer a product of expectation. She is a sovereign being. She no longer needs to be loved to feel her worth. She becomes love through her very way of being. A woman like this does not force strength. She does not need to prove. She knows when to speak, and she knows the power of silence. She can be soft without being weak. She can be firm without being hard, because she has made peace with both her inner light and her inner darkness. She is no longer fragmented, no longer at war with herself. She is living in a state of deep integration, a union of the soul. And this is what gives her that quiet magnetism. No one can name it, but everyone can feel it. To understand this, it is helpful to see that within every soul there are two great energies. The ancient traditions saw this clearly. We each carry an inner river, an energy that is fluid, feeling, connecting. and we each carry an inner mountain, an energy of structure, clarity, and direction. When a woman has not yet found her own inner mountain, she often looks for it in others. She may find herself in relationships where the other person becomes her rock, her guide, her sense of purpose, her savior. But when her inner mountain awakens, she no longer needs a hero. She seeks a true partner, an equal. The teachings say the inner mountain gives us our own inner knowing, our logos, just as the river gives us our capacity for connection, our oros. When a woman cultivates her inner mountain, she connects to her own clarity, her own boundaries, her own direction. She learns to think for herself, to chart her own course. She no longer needs someone to save her from her emotions. She has learned to stand with her inner river and act not from pain, but from a place of deep knowing. I once met a woman like this. After years in a marriage where she made herself small to keep the peace, she chose to leave. Not because she no longer loved him, but because she could no longer betray herself. When I asked what gave her that strength, she said simply, "I have sat with myself in the dark long enough. I will not abandon myself now." That is the sign of the awakened inner mountain. Not loud, not aggressive, just a clarity so deep it cannot be shaken. If you are on this journey, you may feel that your world is changing. People you once felt close to now feel distant. Connections that felt vital now feel thin. Do not be alarmed. It does not mean you are wrong. It means your inner frequency is changing. When a woman begins to live in truth, everything not rooted in that same truth will naturally fall away. And the most beautiful part is this: a woman of this nature is not captivating because of her face or her words. She moves others with her presence. In her gaze, in her stillness, she carries the grounded strength that only one who has walked through her own depths can possess. And this cannot be faked. Truth has no need to shout. It radiates in the silence, in the way you hold space for yourself, and from there, hold space for others. As it is written, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. A whole woman is not someone who has erased her weakness. She is one who has learned to stand with both her tenderness and her fire, her longing and her peace. And because of this, she no longer lives to be chosen. She lives because she has chosen herself. Do you feel something shifting in you? Perhaps it is not yet clear, but if a part of you has stopped trying to please, has stopped asking permission to exist, then know this: the whole woman within you is rising, not from perfection, but from radical honesty, not to be loved by others, but because she has chosen to love herself. And perhaps that is the woman everyone secretly longs to be near, not because she needs them, but because she has become herself. And that is enough. 4. The silent power and true magnetism. Why is she desired? Not all light is bright. Some women enter a room without ornament, without a loud voice, without any effort to be seen, and yet the energy of the room turns towards her. She does nothing, yet her presence changes the space. There is a quiet power flowing from her, a magnetism that cannot be explained. If you look closely, you will see it. It is the power of truth. She is not the most beautiful woman in the room, not the sweetest or the most agreeable. She is not trying to be liked, and she has certainly moved beyond caring if she is approved of. And that is precisely what makes her impossible to ignore. The ancient teachings never say a woman should abandon her wish to be loved. They simply point out that when the need to be loved is placed above the need to be real, we lose the path to our own soul. A whole woman does not need to be liked to know her worth, because she has asked herself the most important question: what story is my soul trying to live? And she has decided not to live a story written by someone else. Have you ever met a woman who no longer apologizes for her feelings? She does not hide her tears or shrink her joy. She does not flinch when her voice trembles with honest emotion. She does not fear when her gaze becomes firm when it is needed. This is a sign of integration. She is not pretending to be strong. She has walked through the fire. She does not pretend to be fine. She has been broken. She has been reborn. And the cracks within her are the very places where the light now enters. As the healers say, only the wounded physician can heal. The one who can truly offer medicine is the one who has carried her own wounds. And the whole woman is the living embodiment of this. She does not use her strength to control. She uses her experience to create a safe space. She has no need to be better, no need to win, no need to prove. She knows the power of refusal. She knows how to say no. She holds her boundaries not as walls, but as the sacred edge of her own energy field. She will not trade her inner peace to keep another comfortable. She will not silence her intuition just to keep things calm. And most importantly, she no longer apologizes for her depth. She no longer says, "I know I think too much," or "sorry for being sensitive." Those were once her tickets for acceptance. But now she knows her depth is not a flaw, it is her gift. True attraction does not come from fitting into a mold. It comes from inner wholeness. When a woman becomes the guardian of her own energy, the universe itself begins to reorganize around her. Those who are not aligned with her truth find they can no longer draw from her well. Relationships built on pleasing fade away. But in their place, she begins to draw to her those who have also walked their own path. People of depth, of honesty, of a willingness to be real. If you are learning to say no, if your hands still shake a little as you practice holding a boundary, and know that you are getting very close to your true self. You are becoming dangerous in the most beautiful way. Dangerous to systems that require you to be small. Dangerous to the kind of love that asks you to betray yourself. And because of this, you are becoming magnetic in a way that can never be faked. An old text says, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Clarity does not come from seeing yourself reflected in the eyes of another. It comes from daring to look inward and not turning away. The woman who is sought after is not chasing anyone's attention. She has chosen to meet herself and to stay. And you, if you are on this path, know this. Every time you say no, when you mean no. Every time you stop apologizing for your honest feelings. Every time you choose not to please, you are becoming that woman. Not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will like it. But your energy will find the ones it is meant for. And once you are true to yourself, the magnetism you radiate will require no explanation at all. 5. The great rearrangement of a life. The magnetism of an honest woman is not just a quiet beauty she carries. It is in the silent, profound shift that happens in her entire world. Because when a woman dares to hold her boundaries, when she dares to refuse what is not in alignment with her truth, what follows is not just the respect of others. It is a complete reordering. Her relationships, her way of being, and most deeply, the belief she once held as unbreakable, all begin to change. Have you ever noticed this? Once you begin to live truthfully, your world starts to move. At first, this movement does not feel like a blessing. It can feel like loss. People who were once close may drift away. Relationships that seemed like everything can suddenly feel empty. Friends stop calling. Family may say, "You have changed." And they are right, but not in the way they imagine. The feeling of loss is real. The sages understood this. One said, to remain in the comfort of the collective is to ignore the call of the soul. When you begin your own path, you may no longer feel you belong to the tribe you came from, because your soul is calling you to a new place, a place where truth matters more than belonging. I remember a woman who shared with me that after leaving a long relationship, she felt like she was in an empty desert. She had not just lost a partner, but mutual friends, family connections, the entire structure of her life. But in that desert, she began to hear something she had never heard before, her own inner voice. "I am no longer afraid of the silence," she said, "because in it, for the first time, I hear myself." And strangely, when you stop trying to hold on to what no longer fits, you begin to attract what does. Not surface connections, not people who require you to shrink, but soul-aligned companions, other beings who are on their own journey back to themselves. They do not compete. They do not advise. They listen. They show up. They cry with you without shame, and they celebrate you when you dare to speak your truth. The wise call this phenomenon synchronicity, the mysterious way the universe realigns itself to match your inner frequency. As you change inside, your old map of the world begins to dissolve. You stop believing that everything must be understood with the logical mind. Your intuition becomes sharper. You begin to dream more, and your dreams are no longer just noise. They become symbols, messengers. The sages believed dreams were a small, hidden door into the deepest sanctuary of the soul. A woman in this state of awakening realizes that wisdom is not about knowing everything. It is about learning to listen to what you do not yet understand. She listens to her dreams, to her body, to the subtle feelings that rise in her when she enters a room. And from that listening, she begins to live by an inner compass, not an outer clock. As she goes deeper, she begins to recognize the great energies moving within her. When she feels creative, passionate, and connected to her body, perhaps the energy of the lover is flowing through her. When she feels the urge to nurture and support, the mother is speaking. When she is drawn to quiet, to books, to deep contemplation, the wise woman is her guide. These are no longer roles to fit into. They are a living language that helps her understand herself. Do you feel you no longer want to explain your changes to others? Do you feel yourself starting to trust an inner knowing you once dismissed? If so, you are very close to the heart of the great change. Do not be afraid if old connections fall away. Do not panic if you no longer feel at home where you once belonged. The restlessness you feel with the old world is a sign that your soul is ready for something more real. A great teacher once said, "What cannot change anything until we accept it." Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. Change does not come from forcing yourself to be different. It begins with the quiet courage to accept that you have already changed. From there, your world begins to reorder itself, not around what others want from you, but around the truth that lives within you. A woman who restructures her life does not need a grand plan. She begins by saying yes to what feels true in this moment. She rearranges her room. She takes a walk alone at dawn. She writes down her dreams. She accepts that she is no longer who she used to be, and lets go of the hope that everyone else will understand. This reordering is not an earthquake. It is a series of quiet, steady, and irreversible shifts. And that is how she walks into her real life. No longer living a borrowed story. Every step, even the ones taken in uncertainty, is a step into a world that is finally her own. 6. The dance of inner seasons. The lover, the mother, the wise woman, the maiden. And so, as a woman begins to walk to the rhythm of her own heart, no longer performing for an audience, she enters a deeper passage of her journey. It is no longer about leaving the old world behind. It is about weaving the many threads within her into a single, breathing tapestry. It is no longer an effort to escape old roles, but a conscious choice to live as a full symphony, where every instrument is honored and invited to play. The ancient maps call this the integration of the inner archetypes. A mistake many women have been taught is to believe there must be only one thing: a good mother, a sensual lover, a capable leader, an obedient daughter. We choose one role, often the one that is most rewarded, and we exile the others. But these archetypes are not boxes. They are streams of energy, living, flowing currents meant to irrigate the landscape of a whole soul. Within every woman lie many inner seasons. She is the lover, sensual, creative, drawn to beauty, unafraid of pleasure. She is the mother, nurturing, patient, compassionate, a safe harbor for others. She is the wise woman, intuitive, deep, drawn to solitude with a long perspective. And she is the maiden, free, spirited, curious, playful, full of wonder. These energies are not in competition. They are facets of the same diamond. I spoke once with a woman in her 50s, the former leader of a large company. For years, she lived from the wise woman and mother energies, strategic, rational, taking care of her team and her family. But after a health crisis, she felt a deep inner burnout. She started taking dance classes. She started drawing. She wrote poetry to herself. She laughed as she told me, I discovered there is a young, playful girl still alive in me. That part was not dead. And it was not. Her lover and maiden were not there to replace her other selves. They were awakening to complete her inner landscape, to help her live more fully. True spiritual freedom does not come from cutting away the parts of ourselves we dislike. It comes from allowing all our inner seasons to coexist without judgment, without war. True maturity is not choosing one quality over its opposite, but learning to hold both. You can be deeply sensual and also love to spend a quiet night reading. You can be a powerful leader and also need days of unstructured play. You can laugh loudly with friends and also cry quietly with a piece of music. You do not have to apologize for any of it. If you have ever felt confused by your own inner contradictions, this is a good sign. It means your inner energies are awakening. Do not rush to choose one. Simply listen. One day you may feel a strong desire to create something beautiful. That is the lover guiding you. On another, you crave silence and old wisdom. That is the wise woman whispering. On another, you may want to simply lie in the grass and watch the clouds. That is the maiden. And when someone you love is in need, the mother will rise without being cold. You are all of these things, and you are allowed to be all of them. A woman who integrates her inner seasons no longer asks, "Who must I be to be loved?" She asks, "Which part of my soul is asking to be lived today?" That question frees her not just from society's cage, but it unlocks a creative power in her work, in her relationships, in the very way she exists. She is no longer trying to be the ideal woman. She becomes a living, breathing ecosystem. Fluid, radiant, and finally uncaged. It is said that wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. Wholeness is not about purification. It is about weaving. And you, if you have journeyed this far, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is there a part of me I have silenced for too long? Is there an inner season knocking, asking to be lived through me again? If the answer is yes, open the door. The path to becoming a whole woman is not a straight line. It is a dance, and you are the choreographer. You do not need permission. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to be honest. The courage to be all that you are, without shame. That is freedom. Perhaps the most sacred part of this journey is not learning something new, but having the courage to unlearn everything that is not you. The layers of be nice, be pleasing, be lovable once kept you safe, but at some point they became a cage. The moment you say, enough, not with anger but with quiet clarity, is the moment you begin to become the woman you are meant to be. You do not need to be the woman everyone desires. The truth is, the women who are most deeply loved are often the ones who never tried to be. They simply lived so honestly that their presence became a gift. There is a profound stillness in the gaze of a woman who knows herself as she stands before the mirror. She is not there to adjust or to fix. She is there simply to see and to smile. Because the woman in the reflection is the one she has been waiting for. Not perfect, not untouched by sorrow, but honest, whole, and no longer asking for permission to be here. An ancient teaching says, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You cannot step into the deepest truth of who you are by chasing a false light. You must walk through the dark valleys. You must be willing to feel what hurts. You must touch what you have buried. And it is from that darkness that you begin to shine. Not with a borrowed light, but with a fire kindled from within. If you are somewhere on this path, if you feel messy, lost, or full of doubt, know you are not walking this road by yourself. We are a generation of women awakening together, putting down the old burdens, choosing ourselves not from selfishness, but from a deep, unconditional love. Every time you speak your truth, every time you hold a boundary, you send a quiet ripple into the great river of our shared becoming. When one woman heals, she heals not just for herself. She heals for her mother, for her daughter, and for all the women who came before her who had no words for their pain. Every step you take toward yourself lights the path for someone else. So even if this road feels lonely, remember this: you are not walking alone. Behind you is a river of women returning to their source. And in front of you is the whole, true self you are becoming. All you must do, in this very moment, is choose yourself, and watch as the world begins to rearrange itself to reflect that choice. You were never meant to be small. You are here to live truly, to live fully. Start now. Start with you.